For the children of Israel shall abide many days without king or prince. So just as the previous verse said, you shall stay with me many days. Now it says, for the children of Israel shall abide many days without king or prince. Because after the kingdom fell, after Shlomo, it wasn't the same ever again. So that means that there were only two real kings in Israel the way Yahweh wanted it, and not even because Shlomo did wrong. So only one, David, and a half, like the barley. One and a half, like all of David's life, and then half of Shlomo's life. And after those days, the kingdom would be split. It would split up in those of the north and those of the south, Israel and Yehudah. The kings of Israel would do wrong, then Yehudah joined and started doing wrong also. So even though there were kingdoms in Israel, they were not from Yahweh because they were worshiping Moloch, Baal, Kium, and other false Elohim. After years and years, the Greeks come, take over, then the Romans come, take over, and they place their own king. So they placed Herod, for instance, who it is believed that he was a son of Asaph, an Edomite, became a Jew who converted and became the king of the Yahudim in that time. Yet, even during the time of Yahushua's life, around the time when he was 10 years old, it is believed that it was around that time that the Romans took away the power or authority from the Yahudim to execute people according to the law, meaning according to the Torah, when it says that the priest must order someone to be killed because he killed somebody, for instance. That authority was taken from them when Yahushua was still a child, which was prophesied in Genesis 49 when talking of the tribe of Yehudah, of how they will lose the authority, the kingship, true kingship. So even though there was a king in Yehudah in the time of Yahushua when he was to be sacrificed, the authority was not in them to kill Yahushua. That's why they had to go to Pilate. They had to go to Rome for Rome to be the one who would execute Yahushua. So when Yahushua came, the kingship was taken from the Yahudim, and there have been 2,000 years from that moment, and that is many days, of course. So it says, for the children of Israel shall abide many days without king or prince. Let me see the word that he uses there for prince. It says, for many days, because for many days will the sons of Israel live or be without a melech, ve'ein sar, without a prince, as Michael is called in the book of Daniel, Sar Hasarim, the prince of princes, the prince who would become the melech, the king, after he appears and fulfills the will of Yahweh. For the children of Israel shall abide many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred pillar. As we know, the first temple was destroyed by the Babylonians. Then when Yahweh freed the people from Babylon 70 years later, through Cyrus, he ordered the temple to be built again. So the second temple, even though some call it Herod's temple because it was destroyed during that time, it actually would be Cyrus or Zerubbabel's or other names way before Herod. So the second temple was built, was not as beautiful as the previous one, yet spiritually represented way more. And Yahushua comes during the time of the second temple. 40 years after his death, the Romans destroyed the temple, and once again, for 1,930 years, around that, more, because Yahushua would have died on the year 30, then 40 years later, the year 70, so only 40 years I will have to take from the 2000. That would be 1,960 years around that, since the temple was destroyed. And I say around because we do not know exactly in which year of the true calendar we are. We'll know pretty soon, but so far we're not sure. It says, for the children of Israel shall abide many days without king or prince, without sacrifice or sacred pillar, without ephod or teraphim, meaning without a connection to the heavens, and obviously mainly without all the physical things that they would use to connect with the Almighty. When they rejected Messiah, those connections didn't work. It's as if you disconnect the telephone, but you keep trying to use the telephone, and it is not even connected to any line or anything. So they had the material, the physical things, but they didn't work anymore because the spirit had been taken away from them because they rejected it by rejecting the Messiah, in whom that spirit was in living. So without sacrifice, sacred pillar, without ephod or teraphim. Afterward, the children of Israel shall return and seek Yahweh their Elohim and David their king. One thing regarding the sacrifice and sacred pillar, as always, Yahweh uses two things, sometimes twice, as in this case, sacrifice or sacred pillar, first and last. Yahushua came to be sacrificed as the lamb for our sins so that the last could become the set apart pillar, the king who will stand built on top of the cornerstone, the foundation, Yahushua HaMashiach. Then ephod, which is to connect with the Spirit, as Yahushua make the connection with the Father through his sacrifice, for us to speak to the Father and receive forgiveness of sins and the answer to our prayers in the name of Yahushua. And teraphim were a type of idol that would speak, because there was a spirit within that idol, and there are two types of teraphim, but one of them was the head of a corpse would go through a ritual. Well, they will embalm it, of course, and they would put a plaque of metal under the tongue with the name of the demon that they would worship or God, and that entity would use the human head to speak to the person worshiping that head. Those were the type of idols that Laban had when he went after Jacob. That's why Rachel had to take them away, because they would speak to him and tell him where he was. So Laban went to his house. He didn't see his idols, his teraphim. So he went to the neighbor and used his. And that's how he found out where Jacob was. So here he's saying Yahweh, that Yahweh would cut all connections to him because they rejected the main connection, the one way to him. So sacrifice and pillar as first and last, ephod and teraphim first and last, because the last comes as the voice, to be the head of the congregation who will speak the words of Yahweh. So ephod and teraphim first and last, and I'm just speaking about what they represent and the reason why they are being mentioned. Yahweh is pretty much telling them that they will lose all connection to him by telling us that it would be because of rejecting the first and last, the two connections that he actually sent. So, verse 5. Afterward, the children of Israel shall return and seek Yahweh their Elohim and David their king. This is huge, because just like I was saying, first and last, two things. He says Yahweh their Elohim and David their king. The way for us to seek Yahweh our Elohim is through Yahushua, our belief in the first. And the teaching of the first will be given by the last, who comes as a prince, who becomes a king. And according to Judaism, is David himself being reincarnated. But even if we don't want to take that from Judaism, Yahweh is clearly speaking that it is David. So it is either a reincarnation or the actual fulfillment of him whom David was supposed to represent, meaning the last, the one who would become the king of Israel. He was represented by the main king of Israel, the only one who fulfilled Yahweh's will all the way till the end, David, who also is called, his name means loved one. He's the loved one, beloved. So that connects with the thing that it said earlier about choosing a wife who loved a friend. But then Yahweh, when he forgives his people, he will put as their king, as their husband, the one who is beloved. And they will finally love Yahweh through Yahushua in the presence of the last. So afterward the children of Israel shall return and seek Yahweh their Elohim and David their king. They shall fear Yahweh and his goodness in the latter days. First and last. Because the beginning of wisdom is the fear of Yahweh. And Yahushua came to give us wisdom So through our fear of Yahweh, we accept Yahushua and receive wisdom. And then it says, in his goodness, as the goodness that comes from the last, meaning from Yahweh through the last in the end times. So during the second coming, the goodness of Yahweh will be given to those who were waiting for it, those who are seeking his presence. But in the latter days, as he himself is saying right here, they shall fear Yahweh and his goodness in the latter days.